tell me about your piece. I mean, there's the program notes, which people
Yeah,
can read, but tell
yeah,
me about your piece, and yeah, I'd like to hear about it. And
yeah.
I'm
So
sure those people, everyone, I'm sure they want to hear about it too.
yeah. So Calling the Sunrise was actually a challenge by a scholar of Native American music. So I was talking to someone who was really involved in Native American music, and he had recently read some research that was um, arguing that the Zuni tribe, the Zuni Nation, was possibly combined with, like, there were similarities between the Japan, and possibly at one point they had met each other and had some crossover. There's no proof to it, but it was intriguing research nonetheless. And so he was challenging me. He's like, hey, maybe musically you could, expand on this and make a really great piece out of it. So that's when we started talking, and he started introducing me to, Native American flute, which was really similar to shakuhachi, and shakuhachi works really well with shamisen, and we started talking about improvisation and sound effects, which is also something shamisen is really good at, and so then from there it just kind of expanded, and so then we came up with this piece, Calling the Sunrise. And the part where I got really moved was when I realized at that point, just sort of luckily, I was doing research in northern Japan, for a festival that was going on there. And, this piece, the Native American piece I was using had to do with, you played in the morning. So when the sun is rising, you perform this piece and
Yeah.
have a prayer. And when I was working in Akita for this festival, which goes all night long, so from 5 o'clock in the evening to 5 o'clock in the morning, they also have a piece that you perform in the morning, and that piece really is this like really refreshing piece. It's like, after this long festival, you play this piece, we're going home, and like it really gives you this feeling like this year is going to be a good year. So so I thought, is there a way I could combine these two ideas together? And so I wrote the piece, tried to combine, both musically the idea of Native American music versus Japanese music, as well as this theme of, praying to the sun in the morning for a good day or for a good year, the blessings, like wake us all up, give us hope that this is going to be good, especially when we talk about right now.
Yes.
Every morning I think we wake up and we're like, oh gosh, what kind of day is this going to be today? What's going to come
Yeah.
out on the news?
Well,
So,
that was one of the main reasons I put your piece at the end of the concert. There were
yeah.
41 pieces. Trying to put them in order was probably more difficult for me than playing them, because playing them, and learning them, you learn it, the next one, playing it, but then to put them in some sort of order, at first it was so difficult, and I was thinking, well, I could just be lazy and put it in alphabetical order. Um,
Yeah.
and then I thought, well, I could put it in age order because I know the age of the youngest, who is 10, and his piece stands up well to the other pieces, and I know the age of the oldest person, who is in his 70s. So, and then I went, well, and then I know the 13-year-old, I know the
Yeah.
17-year-old. After that, I don't know how old you are. The other composers, I went, well, I probably wouldn't even be able to put them in decades, 20s,
Yeah.
30s,
Yeah.
40s. I went, well, that's not going to work. Um, and then I thought, well, think of, as I usually do with programs, think of the beginning, think of the ending.
Yeah.
And I had thought of your piece as the opening, uh, the call to
Yeah.
the call to sunrise, and the sun rises, and then all this music comes in. But another
Yeah.
piece by Miko Kitsukawa, his piece is a prayer for peace, a requiem, and
Yeah.
so I had those two pieces as beginning or end, and I thought, well, a prayer for peace at the end is also very beautiful. Um,
Yeah.
a little sad because of why we're praying, um, and so I put his at the beginning, uh, to open with a nice, and it's a beautiful piece of music and this beautiful prayer, and then your
Mhm.
piece, which I see as not that his isn't positive, but yours is very positive, and you're looking towards the future and the sun coming up. And as you know, a metaphor we would all love for the sun to shine on what we're going through now. And that piece
Yeah.
was perfect. And I was a little, because it's a long concert, people don't have to watch it all at the same time. So I put it into sections, and your piece is rather long, longer than many of the others. And I thought, well, the sort of logistical stuff. Do I want a long piece at the end? And I went, I don't care. It is beautiful, and I trust the music and I trust the audience that if they have sat through the concert, this is an incredible end to walk out, with this beautiful, hopeful piece, which in the middle of it is also a lot of fun. Could you tell all these people about that middle section?
So that middle section is the inspiration from Akita Prefecture. So this is a festival piece, and it's always so surprising. So I originally learned the piece in Akita, learned it all by ear. Truth be told, I had to learn that piece in one day, and then in the evening I had to play it with no music. So I was kind of given like fake music, but it's like memorize it really quickly. In the evening I had to rehearse it with like a bunch of kids, and all the kids played it better than I did. I'm like, what the? It's so embarrassing.
Yeah.
But this was like, and then this was like the whole story of like when my teacher realized I could learn music quickly, and he's like, why don't you learn another piece? Why don't you learn? It was like, oh, come on, I can only. But anyhow, a great piece. It was always a piece that I was really moved by, both with its position within the festival as a total, as well as just musically. I just love the sound of that particular piece. It's very shamisen-y in a sort of fun but very like traditional old style shamisen kind of style, which is, in that festival, not all of the pieces are that really good at expressing the shamisen, so I just particularly really liked it. But once again, when we play that piece in the festival, it is 3 o'clock in the morning. We've literally been playing since 5 o'clock. So it's like, 10, 11 hours of pure, and physically, like I'm playing the shamisen, so you're physically playing, mentally exhausted, and then you're supposed to go back home, and the entire way home you have to play this piece, and they're pushing and pulling this huge, float trying to get back there. And it's so weird, because even like my husband said, because he experienced the festival and walked with us throughout the entire festival, you're so exhausted by 3 o'clock in the morning. You're like, I'm ready for this to be done. Now we're about ready. We went to the shrine, we prayed. Now we're going back home, and this piece gets performed. And it's so like uplifting. It's like kind of refreshing, and you're like, oh wait, maybe I could. Then you get back home, you're like, you know what? I could go for another hour.
Right.
Which is good because you still have to play the next day. But that's what I wanted. I wanted it to be fun. I wanted to be playful. But what was always interesting is performing with you is, for me, because the rhythms made sense in my head from a point of view of memorizing the music early. So I didn't really look at notation. I just memorized it. And, the construction of the beats and the construction of the phrases, I kind of knew. And I changed it for my piece, but I knew what I was doing. It was interesting, working with you. And at first you really struggled. You're like, I just don't get it. You're like, you're reading it so carefully, and of course you're playing it wonderfully, but you're like, I don't know why I can't play with you. It's only, the time signature is changing, but it's still like 2/2, 2/4, 3/4. Like, we're not talking about super weird, out there time signatures. It's, so maybe you can explain, why did you at first? Because by the end, once you got it, then it was like, then we were dancing.
When I was, learning it on my own, of course, it's fine. I'm just reading the dots and moving along. And then came to rehearse with you. And I've only played with shamisen once before. And it was a very, very abstract piece. There were places we had to line up, but there was nothing very rhythmic, and certainly not a dance rhythm that went for several minutes. And there were accents that you had in the shamisen that sounded like a very strong one. And they weren't one. And they were off from where my one was. And sometimes my one, which I would say is the beginning of, a little statement, was also not always in the sheet music, was not always on one. So listening to that, I was like, oh, geez. And then getting off, then I'd be listening to you. And I kept in the rehearsal going back and forth of concentrating on the little dots in front of me or listening to you. Of course, the better is when I combine the two. But if I was I cannot read this and listen to you at the same time because they're just not jiving in my head. And so that was my challenge. And then when we performed and recorded it, it had sort of settled more. And I was thinking, just have fun. And in the rehearsals, there was one particular place that I always would either add a beat or cheat a beat. And in the performance, I was like, so what? There will be two people that know. And no one, and perhaps even I wouldn't know at the time. I might know later because I'm just playing because it is so much fun. And if I add an extra high E, who cares? I mean, you might care, but I didn't. So I was just having fun. And when we did it, that first take was like, that works. And now let's do it again and really sort of, okay, let's really just have fun because now we know it works. And when I listen back to it, it's like, and I have not watched the score since we recorded it. And, I haven't felt the need to. And now because now you have not heard this performance or seen the video of this. Now, maybe next week after you hear the video, hear the concert, you may write me and say, yes, you do need to look at the score.
or I'll just secretly change the score and then
you could, that's it. You could present me with a beautiful gift of the revised version.